Chapter 9. I'm gonna walk you to your car again. Oh yeah. I told Mr. Helsig about the hellspawn yesterday, Dr. King said to me after wrestling practice that night. Oh, I actually walked to school today. I couldn't get a ride. The powers of evil will not be successful. Our power and honor comes from the strength of the earth and then the endless power of the sun's majesty. They will fall to our strength, just like the cliffs crumble into sand from the endless torrent of the ocean's waves. Justice will have its revenge like the earth. I think Sherman understands that we've got his back. Oh yeah, Dr. King cut off Coach Helsig with a smile. Until the sun stops burning, and the planet turns into a lump of space ice. The orc growled as he raised both of his massive arms in the air. I'll give you a ride home in my madness machine. Let's go, the werewolf said, as he gestured toward the door. May your rest tonight be filled with the endless screams of your enemies and may you rise tomorrow with the lava of justice running through your veins. Coach Helsig said as he patted me on the back. Every fiber of my being was sore from the 2 practices today, and I tried not to faint when the giant orc touched me. Thanks, I said to the green-skinned man. Then I followed the werewolf out of the gym. Sherman, a girl's voice rang out in the night air, and Dr. King let out a low growl before he realized who had shouted my name. It was Kristen, and she was joined by Rose and Lily. The 3 girls looked to be waiting for me to get out of practice, and I tried to keep from letting out an exasperated moan when I saw them. Hello, beautiful ladies, Dr. King said to the 3 girls. Young women should not be at school this late. It is dangerous. Oh yeah. We wanted to see Sherman and bring him dinner. His sister is sick and he just got into town. His parents aren't. Kristen started to explain, but Rose cut her off. Lily actually made him dinner, I made him dessert, and Kristen didn't want to feel left out, so it was my idea to interview him in the first place. The gold-haired girl scrunched up her nose at Rose. I was about to give him a lift home in the madness machine. Yeah, do you 3 need a ride? I think the 3 of you will fit in the back, but one of you might have to sit on Sherman's lap. Oh yeah, the werewolf said as he stroked his chin. We each have a car, Rose said. I can take Sherman home, Dr. King, I know. You must be really busy. He can ride with me. I've got the food in my trunk, Lily said with a shake of her silvery hair. I have the dessert. That's more important than the dinner, Rose smiled, but her voice had taken on a bit of an edge that I wasn't used to hearing when angel girls talked. How is dessert more important than dinner? Lily asked as she rolled her eyes. He is a wrestler. He needs to eat the right nutrients so that Sherman should probably ride with me, since I was the first one to talk to him and his sister, Kristen stated. Are you pulling and I saw him first move, Kristen? Rose asked with a bemused smile. No, I'm just pointing out that I think you've got a problem. Oh yeah, Dr. King leaned down to whisper in my ear. What should I do? I asked him as the 3 girls continued to argue with each other. I'm gonna help you out. Oh yeah, the werewolf whispered again in my ear, before he stood at his full height to address the 3 angel girls. Ladies, Sherman here has got to be training for the upcoming battle. Yeah, we've got some talking that we need to do, and the walk here is how we need to do it. I'm gonna drive him back to his place. You 3 can meet him there if there is no more of this grandstanding. Do you understand? Yes, Dr. King. The 3 girls apologized quickly. Good. Now let's get it going. Oh yeah. He gestured toward the parking lot, and the 5 of us set off in that direction. We didn't talk during the short walk across the school, and each of the girls walked to their own cars in the parking lot. Rose drove a white Mustang convertible, Lily had a white Volvo station wagon, and Kristen drove a white Honda Civic with a wing on the trunk. We'll follow you there, Kristen shouted as she opened her door. Okay, I said after I climbed into Dr. King's Jeep. I fumbled for my phone as the werewolf started the howling engine. A few seconds later I was texting Charlotte. 911 / Dr. King is driving me home and the angel girls are following. They are trying to bring us dinner because you are sick. Dr. King pulled out of the parking spot and then accelerated onto the street. It was night, so there weren't a lot of cars on the road. Sherman, when you are choosing a woman, you gotta pick a real good one. Oh, yeah. A real good one? I asked as my eyes darted back and forth from my phone to the wolf man. Oh yeah. She's gotta be your moon and your stars and your sun. She's gotta support you and take care of you. You'll come home all beaten up from the endless battle of the squared circle. A good woman is gonna patch you back up and then love you to full health. Don't mess around with the ones that are into the showboating. You want the ones that are gonna be your partner in love, business, and life. My wife, Lady Bella, was my manager during my pro wrestling career. She was real good. Yeah, she takes care of everything now. Just love her a lot, and she is a fine woman. Oh yeah. What if there is a girl you really like, but she has kind of hinted that she doesn't like you, but then she does things that make you think she might like you, but then she gets you all confused when you try to tell her how you feel? Huh. That sounds like quite a pretzel that has turned into a pickle. Yeah. I'm gonna tell you that when you are the cream of the crop, there are gonna be a lot of women that want your time, Sherman. So you have to find one where it will be easy. Easy? I asked as we turned on the street that was half a mile from my apartment complex. Oh yeah, the squared circle requires a lot of strength. Not just up here, the man said as he flexed one of his biceps. The thing was probably the same diameter as my skull, but in here also. This is the important part. Dr. King tapped on his head next to his sunglasses. So your woman shouldn't be tough. Oh, she is tough. She's strong, I admitted with a laugh, and then wondered if the werewolf would think about the succubus attack from last night. I'm not talking about that. She's gotta be strong. Yeah, she's gotta be able to fly in the sky with you. I'm talking about the relationship. That shouldn't be hard. No, sir. It's gotta be easy because everything else in life is real hard. Yeah, even if it wasn't hard. You're the kind of chicken hawk that will just go around looking for ducks who are confused about their identities. You know what I mean? Oh yeah. I think I do, I said as the hairs on my neck tingled. Did the werewolf know that I could see the real identity of Earth soldiers? So, did that mean that he knew why I was here? Did he know Charlotte and I were working together and that she'd actually been trying to kill him last night? We pulled up to the apartment complex and I saw the other 3 angel girls park on the street. The werewolf looked at me with a wide grin and pointed to their cars. You've got to get to practice tomorrow morning. With all these women around, you might get distracted. That's one thing that separates the amateur versus the professional versus the champion. The champion doesn't get distracted. Oh, yeah. I'm not gonna tell you what to do. I'm just gonna say that you need to keep your eye on the prize and your body on the level. Oh yeah. Okay. I'll see you at practice tomorrow. Thanks for the ride, I said as I fell out of the Jeep. Oh yeah, he howled before he sped off. I saw the 3 angels girls get out of their cars and my phone buzzed in my pocket. Don't let the werewolf near the apartment. The girls can come though. I've been bored all day and I haven't made us anything to eat. Angels can cook. Charlotte's text surprised me and I reread it 3 times to make sure I hadn't gone crazy. Hi Sherman. Rose was the first one to me and she had a cake-shaped box in her hands. Hi, I greeted her and then smiled at the trio of girls. Charlotte's fine. With you guys coming over. The words tumbled awkwardly out of my mouth, but the 3 winged angels just nodded at me. Great. Where is it? Lily asked. Both Kristen and her were carrying casserole-looking dishes and I reached out to take one of them. I nodded for them to follow me, and we walked up the stairs to our apartment. Charlotte opened the door when we made it up the stairs and the beautiful succubus girl gave the 4 of us a big smile. She was wearing sweatpants and a tight white t-shirt. I couldn't see any of her injuries from this morning, save for her wing, which still had a 3-inch tear in it. Hi, she said as she gestured for us to enter. You all are saving us from starvation. It's no problem. Sherman said you were sick. I just felt so bad that you all don't have parents looking after you. Where should we set this? Lily asked. But I was already putting my dish on the kitchen counter, and the other girls followed my example. Are you feeling better? Kristen asked Charlotte. Sherman said you were sick. A little. I might not be going to school tomorrow. Oh, do you have the flu? Lily asked. No. It isn't contagious, Charlotte said, and the other 3 girls nodded. The action seemed odd to me. I was a bit surprised the angel girls didn't ask for more details. Maybe it was a girl thing? I'm surprised at how organized your place is, Rose said as she looked around. Last time my family moved, We had boxes everywhere for 2 years. I was a little bored all day. We don't have TV or internet access yet. I even started reading a few of Sherman's comic books, Charlotte said as she smiled at me. You did? I squeaked. Some of the manga I had brought with me were not meant for girls, and I hoped that she didn't find the ones I had kind of hidden away at the bottom of the boxes. Yep. I liked them. I brought stuff to eat with. I didn't know if you had any plates or forks or what not, Lily said as she began to unpack everything. The other 2 angel girls began to help her, and a few minutes later everyone was sitting around our small kitchen table. Lily had made a lot of different entrees and there was enough here to feed a dozen people, but the angel girls didn't touch their plates until we were all seated. Then Kristen cleared her throat a bit and looked at me. Sherman, can you lead us in prayer? She asked with a hopeful expression on her beautiful face. Oh, that would be wonderful, Lily said as she reached her hand out to Charlotte. The succubus' purple eyes opened wide when the angel girl wrapped her fingers around hers, and she looked at me with an expression that was the closest I'd ever seen to terror. I bet Sherman will do a nice one, Rose said as she linked her fingers with mine. Kristen was on my other side and she grabbed my right hand before she joined hands with Charlotte. I don't think, Charlotte began. Oh, is it your turn to say grace? Kristen said with her eyes wide. I'm so sorry. I just got excited about Sherman saying it. It is definitely not my turn. Charlotte stuttered. Think that maybe one of you should say it. But we are guests. We don't want to. I can do it. It is okay, I interrupted Kristen. I guess that Charlotte couldn't do it because she was a creature of Satan, and while I had never actually said grace, I'd watched enough TV to get the idea. Sherman, you can't, Charlotte started to say, but I closed my eyes and bowed my head a bit over the plate of food. Heavenly Father, God in heaven, thank you for this food and the wonderful people that made and brought it to us and are here today as our guests. My sister and I appreciate everyone's help and thanks again. In Jesus' name, amen. The 3 angel girls all said amen at the same time as me, and then we unlinked hands. Well, except for Rose, who gave my fingers a tiny squeeze before she let go. That was great, the short-haired woman said as she winked at me. I agree, Lily said. It was very heartfelt. Gave me butterflies in my stomach. Kristen smiled at me. The 3 angel girls began to eat, and I noticed that Charlotte was sitting very still. A wet sheen of perspiration was on her face, neck and arms. Her skin was normally a bit pale, but she now looked as white as poured milk. Her purple eyes were open to almost half the size of her face, and she stared at me as if I was some sort of monster. The 3 angel girls hadn't seemed to have noticed that Charlotte wasn't eating, and I gave her a concerned expression. The brown-haired succubus girl shook her head slowly and then raised a trembling hand to her fork. It looked as if she didn't have the strength to even lift a bite of food. Charlotte, are you okay? Rose asked. Oh, just had some. Charlotte looked at me and then back to the red head cramps. Ugh, the 3 angel girls said with a slight shake of their wings. Worse, Kristen said. Feeling, Lily signed. Ever, Rose finished. Yeah, I'll be okay. The succubus looked at me again, and her eyes narrowed slightly. She actually looked kind of mad, and I shrugged at her. You haven't had any yet, Sherman, Lily said. Oh, sorry. It looks delicious. I'll try some now. I took a bite of the casserole and then smiled at the blonde angel girl. It really was great, and my stomach reminded me that I hadn't eaten nearly enough in the last 2 days. It's wonderful, I said after I gulped down a second bite. The tall angel girl's cheeks seemed to turn a bit red, and then she looked down at her plate of food. How was school today, brother? Charlotte half asked, but her voice sounded a bit strange. It was almost like she was angry with me. It was good. He beat up Mitch in Street Fighter. That was entertaining. Rose chuckled. Huh. Charlotte raised an eyebrow. Mitch is the school photographer, I explained to Charlotte. But he prefers photojournalist, Lily said. He's a nice guy, just a little too wrapped up in his art, Kristen said. Aren't we all, though? Rose laughed. So you played video games against him? The succubus asked. Yep. Sherman creamed him, Kristen giggled. He was saying yesterday that he didn't believe that Sherman was a pro. Rose said with an eye roll. Why would anyone lie about that? Especially someone's sister. He was just being jello. Can I ask you three a question? I said. In the gym there is a wrestling trophy. It looks like it is made of silver. Looks like a tower or something. Do you know what I am talking about? I saw Charlotte's eyes dart from mine to look at the other girls. Oh yeah, the old silver trophy. When I started running the paper last year I did a story on it. The misprint on the thing makes it hard to track down, but I think we got it back in '92. The school was still using microfilm then, and my predecessor didn't transfer the scans to the computer archives. It is made of silver? Charlotte asked as she leaned forward. Her face was still white and she still looked like she was in a lot of pain. Yeah, kind of cool. The weird thing is that the article I found said that the school got it for the championship the year before, but the paper started the first year that the school actually had students. That is strange. Sounds like it might be magical. Charlotte smiled and I saw her look at me out of the corner of her eye. Huh, might be, Rose laughed. I've got a key to the case if you want to look at it closer. You have the key? I asked before Charlotte spoke. Sure. Well, it is in our media team possession. Rose gestured to Lily and Kristen. We might need to take a picture of a trophy or clean them or whatever. We've got keys to all the display cases in school, Kristen said with a shrug. Don't let Lincoln High know, Rose said. I bet those assholes would just love to steal our trophies. Especially that giant Gene guy. He lives down the street from our school. He does? I asked. Yep. Rumor is that he applied for the job at the same time as Dr. King. Those two have a crazy history. Have you seen some of the wrestling promotional videos? Lily asked. Videos? I shrugged. Yeah, they did pro wrestling stuff against each other. Had a bunch of drama. It looks overacted, but I guess it was actually for real. The two don't get along at all. Lily shrugged and then took a bite of her food. That's kind of crazy, I said. Then I looked across the table to Charlotte. Giant Gene is a lot like Dr. King. Giant Gene also has a friend that is named Fabulous Morgan. He looks like he, doesn't really like the sun. No tan. You haven't met either one of them yet. Charlotte nodded after I spoke and a slight smile spread across her pale lips. She actually looked like she was getting some of her color back again and the glow of perspiration on her forehead was now absent. Do you know where Gene lives? Charlotte asked the girls. Yep, everyone does. It's a really gaudy place. He's got a Hummer that is raised twice as high as Dr. King's Jeep. Rose laughed. I'm feeling a lot better. Do you all want to go for a drive after this? I'd love to see this guy's house, Charlotte said. But we haven't had dessert yet. I made a cake for. Rose frowned as she spoke. After cake, of course. Charlotte let out a laugh. After all, I was sick today. The four girls laughed, and I wondered if there was something I had missed from the conversation. Chapter 10. I have to talk to my brother real quick. We'll be down in a moment, Charlotte said to the three angel girls. We had just finished cleaning up after the cake, and the succubus had asked them to drive us around town for a bit. Great. We'll be down waiting. We'll take Lily's car. Charlotte can sit up front and Sherman can sit next to me, Rose said. And me. He can sit in the middle, Kristen said. How come I have to drive? Lily pouted. You have the bigger car, the other two girls said at the same time. Be right down, Charlotte called to them before she shut the door. Don't ever pray to God again, she seethed. Her eyes glowed a bright purple, and she pushed her pointed finger into my sore chest. What? I'm sorry, I didn't. You could have killed yourself. Did you know that? No, or else you wouldn't have done it. How are you still alive? She asked. My back was against the door now and her finger was digging into my ribs. What's wrong? I'm fine. It was just a prayer. What was the big deal? Her sudden anger had caught me off guard and I felt my body struggle with a flush of adrenaline. Your soul, mind, and body belong to Satan, she hissed. If he hears you praying to God, he can and will destroy you without a moment's warning. Your words gave me a killer migraine and made my bones want to turn into jelly. Can't pray over my meals. Neither can you. What were you thinking? My jean pocket buzzed and we both felt it because Charlotte had somehow straddled my thigh when she was speaking to me. She sighed heavily and then stepped back away from me so that I could pull the phone out. Hi SAA. I almost whispered the Lord of Evil's name when I answered it. Sherman. How are things? How's school? How's Charlotte? How's the killing of the werewolf going? I've got the next mission all lined up for you. We've run into some challenges. We are working on it right now though, I said. I don't like the sound of that, Sherman. That sounds like code for I haven't killed the werewolf yet. Is that what is going on? We are going to need a few more days to. Did you ever hear the joke about the bear, Sherman? Satan asked on the speaker of my cell phone. The bear. Yeah, the bear. Is Charlotte there? I don't think she's heard this one. I looked at the succubus, and she shook her head as she made a waving motion with both of her hands. She, isn't here right now, I lied, and the irony of the situation didn't escape me. So there are these two guys hiking in the forest, and the first one says to the second one, I've got some bear spray, just in case one of them attacks. The second guy says, I'm not worried because I'm wearing my running shoes. The first guy says, you're an idiot. I don't care how fast you run, you can't outrun a bear. Then the second guy goes, I don't need to outrun the bear. Ha, do you get it, Sherman? Satan asked. I just need to outrun the guy. Well, yeah, but I wasn't talking about you. This is just a joke. Satan, I kind of thought that you are telling me these as metaphors because I'm Sherman. I love you like a son, but I'm sorry. You just aren't mean enough to be the metaphorical bear here. So I don't want you to look too deep into this. Just a joke, okay? Okay, but yeah, that was pretty funny. I forced my mouth to smile when I spoke. Good. Now can you please go kill this fucking werewolf before I get mad at you? Oh, the bear joke reminds me of this demon bear snake I had thought about making a few years ago. I was gonna call it a cobra air. Pretty cool name, huh? I'm gonna go work on that now. Talk to you tomorrow. Toodles. The line on my phone went dead, and I looked up to Charlotte. Why is he so? Just don't ask, she said as she raised a finger to her lips. Okay. This giant Gene guy is a werewolf, she asked. Yeah, and he is even bigger than Dr. King. Could there be two alphas in the city? I asked. I dunno. It is possible. They would probably be fighting each other all the time for dominance. That sounds like exactly what is going on. Gene has to be an alpha. Also his friend Fabulous Morgan is a vampire. That was what I guessed. This could work for us. Charlotte smiled. We get this trophy, kill Giant Gene with it, and then stash it in Fabulous Morgan's house. It will totally work, I said with excitement. This seemed like the perfect solution to our mission. I really liked Dr. King and didn't want to kill him. I also didn't see how Charlotte would be able to get the jump on him again. We need to figure out where this Morgan guy lives, then we need to get the trophy. I need to kill him with it, get it to Morgan's house, and then we have to get a werewolf to find out that Gene is dead, so he can follow the scent. Back to Morgan's house. Charlotte stepped up to the door and peered through the keyhole to make sure the angel girls still weren't outside. There are a lot of ifs, and Satan isn't giving us a lot of time. Do you think the wolves will be convinced that Morgan killed Gene if we plant it at his house? Seems like a bit of a stretch, I asked. They are the coaches of the other wrestling team, right? What if we got both of them together here for whatever it is when they all wrestle together? A tournament, I clarified. Yeah, or maybe you can have one sooner. It would be easier to do it then, and slip it into Morgan's bag or something. The girl shrugged. Then you would have to steal the trophy and kill him without anyone seeing you, I said. Right. That would be hard. Let's just see where this guy lives and maybe we can get a look at the trophy tonight, Charlotte said. Tonight? Yes. She winked at me. Don't pretend like you don't enjoy these angel girls hanging out with you all the time. I don't really. It's okay, Sherman, well, we've got to do the mission and stuff. Just don't get distracted, okay? Charlotte, I've already told you that I felt my heart hammer in my ribcage and I thought about not saying the next words. Have feelings for you. I really care about you, but in the car and elevator you made it seem like I know what I said. She raised a hand to interrupt me. It is for the best. You can't say any of that stuff in front of Satan. Do you understand? She asked. Yeah, I know. You said that. Sherman, look. The beautiful succubus took a deep breath and reached out her hands. I was surprised when her fingers found mine, but I didn't shy away from her touch. I know you feel that way about me, and I'm flattered. I'm not allowed to return those feelings. I'm not supposed to. Satan can change his mind any second now and tell me I'm not your partner. That would be terrible, but it would be worse if I let myself share your feelings. Our eyes met, and I saw a deep sadness in the beautiful purple orbs. But you can just make yourself not feel things you don't want to feel? Felt my voice quiver a bit when I asked her the question. No, I can't. That is why I'd prefer it if you stopped telling me how you felt about me. Those angel girls are pretty. I'm not interested in them, and we are leaving when we are done, I said. Or there are plenty of my sisters in hell that would enjoy stuff with you. She looked down when she spoke. And you'd be okay with that? You'd want me to date someone else? Kiss someone else? Do other stuff with someone else? I squeezed her fingers tighter. But Charlotte didn't look up. We have to go. They are waiting, she whispered as she pulled her hands away from me. I thought about pressing her. I thought about yelling my love for her again. Or telling her that I'd never want to be with anyone but her, and that I was only working with Satan so that I could have her freedom. But there was a knock on the door. You two coming? Rose asked after I opened the door. Yeah, sorry, Charlotte said, and then she walked past me out the door and down the stairs of our apartment. Ugh, I can totally get like that sometimes too, Rose said to me after the succubus walked down the stairs. Get like what? I asked. Oh, nothing. The pretty red-headed angel smiled at me, and then she reached down to hold my hand. The gesture felt alien when compared to Charlotte, but I didn't think the winged girl would appreciate it if I yanked my arm away from her. Let's go, she said, and we walked down the stairs. Chapter 11. There is his house. Lily pointed as we drove by the McMansion-style home. Was on the other side of the school from where our apartment was, so it only took us 5 minutes to get there. Wow, it is huge, Charlotte said, and I guessed that she was faking a bit of the amazement. Yep. You'd think that Giant Jean was the wrestling champion and not Dr. King, Rose commented. She was sitting on my right side behind Charlotte and Kristen was on my left. Why do you say that? I asked. Dr. King's house is a lot smaller, she shrugged. Not that size matters or anything, the girl said quickly. It is what is inside that matters. He's super nice and his wife is also nice and really pretty, Kristen said. You've met her? I asked. Just once. She goes to most of the sports events that Dr. King is at. One time I got lucky and sat next to her. She is great. I'd love to have her on the podcast one day. Maybe I'll ask her for the next show. Do you all want to go get some coffee or something? Lily asked from the driver's seat. I kind of want to see this trophy Rose was talking about, Charlotte said. Oh, maybe tomorrow, the redhead asked. It is kind of late to be at the school. We aren't allowed on campus? Is there security or something? The succubus asked with a twitch of her wings. For a second I wondered how their disguises worked. Seemed as if the 4 girls were all sitting a bit forward in their seats because of their wings, but it would have looked strange if one couldn't see the wings. Did the girls see everyone sitting without wings but still leaning forward against empty space? I guess not, since it would have meant that they all could have guessed at each other's true form easier. I would have to ask Charlotte when we got a moment alone together. There isn't any security. It is just against the rules, Kristen said. Huh, won't it just take a few minutes? Charlotte asked. We'd have to get the key from the media room cabinet, and then walk all the way over to the gym, Rose said. Yeah, so just a few minutes. It will be fine, Charlotte pointed to the road. Up ahead. That's one of the entrances to the parking lot, isn't it? Yes, but we really shouldn't, it's just so late, Lily said. Yeah, I guess we don't want to get in trouble. Probably not a good idea. Anyways, the moon is nice out tonight and someone might think that the 5 of us are sneaking around campus for some sort of romantic rendezvous or something. Romantic rendezvous? Lily had slowed down her station wagon and glanced over to the succubus. You know, a guy and a girl alone in the dark hallways of the school, or in an empty classroom or the gym. All sorts of romantic stuff could go on. Nothing too serious, of course. That has to wait until marriage, but Sherman, you are waiting until you get married too? Kristen asked. I started to say. That's really cool. Rose interrupted me. Not a lot of guys are like that. They are so into sex. I mean, that sounds like a lot of fun, but we want to wait to do it with the one we love. The three angel girls sighed in unison. Yeah, but kissing is all sorts of fun. Don't you all think? Charlotte prompted. Yeah, Lily said, and the other two girls shifted in their seats next to me. So turn in here, Charlotte ordered as we came up to the parking lot. Will just take us a few minutes to see this trophy. Then maybe we can head back to our place and play a board game or something before we have to go to bed. You three still want to hang out with Sherman, that is. We can probably stay awake for a few more hours. Yes, the three angel girls said in unison, and I wondered if Charlotte had used some sort of magic that spun the girls around so suddenly. Lily turned her station wagon into the parking lot, and then parked the Volvo near the building with the media room. There were no other cars parked at the school, and the moon was casting an eerie glow on the buildings. It was as if the colors and textures of the school were flipped, and we'd stepped into a mirror world. A few minutes later, Kristen was unlocking the door to the media room. Rose fished a set of keys out of one of the side cabinets, and then she jingled them at us. I had a thought, Kristen said as she moved to block the door. I didn't have a chance to interview Sherman today. Maybe I can do that right now while you three go see the trophy. We should all go, Lily said. I want to be here when Sherman gets interviewed. I agree with Lily. We need to go together. It isn't fair if Kristen gets Sherman all to herself, Rose said. I think the podcast is a great idea, Charlotte said with a clap of her hands. Why don't the three of you stay here with Sherman and I'll go look at the trophy? It's in the gym trophy case. I noticed that the tone of her voice and mannerisms had changed some tonight. The succubus girl was normally rather stoic, but she was acting bubbly like the angel girls, and it was kind of strange. I realized that she was probably acting like them so that they would like her more. After all, succubi were supposed to be supernatural seductresses, and I imagined that Charlotte's powers would also work on women. I suddenly had a vision of all four of the beautiful girls kissing and touching each other, but I managed to push it out of my head before it had any sort of effect on my body. You really want to see this trophy, huh? Rose asked. Well, yeah. Also, I know my brother. He's had to hang out with just me for the last few weeks. Before we came down to the car, he was asking for my advice about you three. He really likes you all, but he's kind of shy, I think. He wants to hang out with you without me around to nag him. I was about to correct Charlotte, but I realized what she was doing and I guessed that it would probably work. I doubted that anyone looked in the trophy cases on a regular basis. She could probably take the silver one tonight, and no one would know about it until they found it with Morgan. My sister is right, I said. I'd love to just hang out with you three. Maybe do the interview now and then we can just talk. I shrugged toward the sound booth. I didn't like the idea of being alone with the three angel girls, but they seemed rather harmless. I don't know if that is, Lily started to say, but Rose cut her off. You two can go with Charlotte. I'll stay here and hang out with Sherman, the red-headed angel girl said. Hey, I'm the one that needs to interview him for the podcast, Kristen said. I need to interview him for the paper as well. Rose shrugged and then she tossed Charlotte the keys. I'll be back soon, Charlotte said as she opened the door. Wait, Lily said, but the succubus had already left, and the thick door closed a moment later. Lily let out a soft sigh, and then she turned to look at me. All three of the angel girls were actually looking at me, and their happy gazes were a bit unnerving. Maybe we should start the interview? I suggested. Yes, Kristen said with a clap of her hands. Let's go into the booth. I'll come too, Rose said. Me also, Lily said. It doesn't look quite big enough for all four of us, does it? I asked. As I stepped toward it, I did see 4 seats in the small room, but whoever sat next to me would be really close. 4 is a little tight, but we do it all the time, Kristen said as she opened the door to the sound booth. She pointed to the seat in the far corner opposite a computer screen, and I slid into the chair. There was a little bit of commotion outside of the door, and I heard a series of whispers, but then Rose slid into the seat next to me. Her wings brushed against my face, and I did my best to pretend that I hadn't felt anything. Kristen sat across from me, and then Lily sat in the last chair, the taller girl had a sour expression on her face, and she shot Rose a glare when the redhead smiled at me. Okay, Sherman. We are going to just ask you some questions. I'll do all the show filler in post-production. Are you ready? Kristen asked as she tapped a bit on her keyboard and then adjusted the microphone. Sure, I said, but my hands were sweaty, and I wished that I hadn't have recommended that we do this. Maybe there was a way I could convince them to end the interview quickly, but not too quickly since Charlotte needed to steal the trophy. I can edit a bunch of stuff out, so just feel as if we are having a nice conversation. Don't overthink it. Okay, Kristen asked as she adjusted the four microphones on the table. Sounds good, I said after I cleared my throat twice. Recording in 3, 2. The pretty angel girl held up her finger for the numbers but only put one up instead of speaking. Hello, Wild Wolves. I'm joined today by two of my partners in crime, the lovely Lily Lana, who you all know. Hi, Wild Wolves, the taller angel said into her microphone. And the beautiful Rose Owen, Kristen introduced her other friend. Oh, hi, sweeties, Rose kind of purred into the microphone. With us today is a very special guest that is the talk of the school. You've all heard rumors about our new wrestling star, and we've got him here now. Welcome to the show, Sherman, Kristen said with a wink. Thanks for having me. Thanks for coming on. Kristen beamed. Can you start by telling us about how you got started wrestling at your old school? I kind of fell into it, I said. Some of the boys on the team have told us that you are really good. Lily said. Oh, Titan has complimented me. He's a great guy. I'm learning a lot from Dr. King. He's teaching me so much. It is almost as if I've never wrestled before. As soon as I finished speaking, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was either Satan or Charlotte, but I didn't want to risk Rose seeing it was the Lord of Evil, so I just squeezed it through my jeans to kill the vibration. But you were state champ at your old school? Rose asked with a raised eyebrow. The wrestling here is much better. The words poured out of my mouth and my phone started buzzing again. Shit. Was Charlotte in trouble? You also spent some time in Japan. Can you tell us about that? Kristen asked. Sure. What do you want to know? I asked. My phone was vibrating again and I pressed the button through my jeans to stop it. Rose noticed my movements and she raised one of her pretty eyebrows. Can you start with your career as a pro gamer? How did you get that good and how did you get discovered? Kristen asked. I played a bunch of tournaments online and then I stopped talking when the door to the media room was suddenly thrown open. Charlotte ran into the room and then made a frantic waving motion with her hand. What's going on? Kristen asked as she hit a button on her keyboard. Lily opened the door, and we could then hear Charlotte's voice. The trophies are all gone, she shouted with dismay. What? The three girls gasped. I went to the gym and they were already gone. Someone had broken open the glass and taken the trophies. Come quick. The succubus gestured and we poured out of the booth in a confusing flap of angel wings. The four girls ran out of the media room together, and I followed behind. We all jogged across the quad. Lily called out to Charlotte and asked her if she saw anyone. No, but I heard the glass smash a few moments before I got there. The succubus cried as we crossed the small service road that separated the athletic side of the campus from the other classroom buildings. The side door to the gym was already open, and we ran into the unlit building. Sure enough, the glass display case that I'd looked through this morning was smashed open. There was no trace of the trophies, and the wood floor by the wall was covered with sharp shards of the glass. It was like this when you got here? Kristen asked with surprise. Yes. Charlotte sighed, and I tried to guess if the girl was lying or not. This wasn't our plan, so I guessed that someone had actually stolen them. We need to call the police, I said, but I regretted the words as soon as Charlotte shot me an angry glare. No. We'll all get in trouble for being here so late. Our friends are on the student council, and it would be terrible for their reputation, the succubus said. It will? But we didn't have anything to do with this. Kristen gasped. Oh, I know, and the police will figure that out as well, after dozens of hours of questioning. Maybe if we search the rest of the gym, we can find. We need to split up and see if we can catch who stole them, Kristen said. They probably left in a car. There are 2 parking lots. Maybe we'll catch it. Plate. I'll go with Sherman to the lower lot, Rose shouted as she grabbed my hand. Wait, Charlotte hissed and we all fell silent. Did you hear that? It sounds like the showers in the locker room, I said as I pointed to the far corner of the gym where the boys' locker room lay. They must still be here. They are probably vandalizing the boys' locker room. As the succubus spoke, there was a crash in the distance and the sound of boys laughing. Now we know they are here. We should really call the police, said Lily. Her blue eyes were wide, and it was obvious that she was a bit afraid. They might get away. Let's at least see if we can identify them later. Charlotte whispered. Follow me. The four of us followed the succubus across the dark gym floor. While we walked, I pulled out my phone to check on who had tried to reach me. It was Charlotte, of course. There was a missed call but then a string of text messages. The boys from Lincoln High are breaking into the trophy case. Come quick. Ugh, where are you? They took the trophy. I think it is the wrestling team. They are talking about you and Dr. King. Are you coming? They just went into the boys' locker room. They are going to go into the girls' next. Oh my Satan, where are you? Fuck it. I'm coming to get you. Did you call the police? Lily asked when she saw me put away my phone. I will once we see them. I don't want the police to. Shoo! Charlotte turned to hiss at us with her finger over her lips. We were right at the door to the boys' locker room, and the succubus slowly started to push it. The angel girls crowded around the open crack of the door, and I couldn't really see past all the wings. Can you see anything? I asked with the quietest whisper I could make. No, they have broken into all the lockers. They must have bolt cutters or a pry bar. They are off to the side. There was a crashing sound and the boys laughed again. Charlotte pulled away from the door and then turned to me. I'll go in and confront them. You come in after I give the sig. You can't go into the boys' locker room, Lily hissed. It is against the rules. Don't be such a goody two-shoes, Lily. Rose hissed. They are vandalizing our school. We have to stop them. Charlotte can't go in there first. Kristen hissed. The other angel girls nodded and then they looked at me. It's okay. I'm used to, the succubus began, but then I interrupted her. I'll go in and in front, I stammered. I doubt they will do anything violent if all of us are there. I was kind of scared of confronting a group of boys, but I didn't want to let Charlotte or my new friends down. I'd always wanted to be a hero, but my shoulders were trembling with fear. That was probably okay. I've been terrified a lot in the past week, and confronting a group of asshole boys in a locker room was a lot less scary than battling demons in hell. This isn't a good, Charlotte started to whisper as I walked past her, but I interrupted her. I wouldn't be a very good man if I didn't protect my sister. Oh, for the love of, don't be so macho about it, Sherman. Okay, fine, but I'll be right behind you. Thanks, I muttered as I pushed through the door. Sherman is so brave, Kristen whispered behind me. It's really hot. I thought I heard Rose say, but I wondered if I had imagined it until Lily spoke. Rose, don't be so scandalous. Shua, don't pretend you aren't into him. There was a short hallway, maybe only 6 feet, between the doorway and the main open area of the locker room. I could only see the first row of lockers from inside of the hallway, and the locks had been cut from all of their doors. The contents of the lockers were scattered across the floor like a clothes grenade had gone off, and I poked my head around the corner to see that the rest of the locker room was in a similar state. Most of the lockers were busted open, and I saw a dozen boys on the far side of the room. They had their backs to us, and it looked like one of them had a big sledgehammer. He was smashing the shower heads off the wall, and water was spraying from all angles. It was getting the boy with the hammer wet, but he didn't seem to care. It was the human wrestler from Lincoln High, Albert, and he let out a howl of laughter after he smashed the last shower from the wall. The sight of the good-looking boy vandalizing my new school made me angry, and the emotion pushed back a good chunk of my terror. Yeah, there were 13 of these boys, but I liked this school and they were just being a bunch of assholes. Hey, stop that, I shouted as I stepped from the cover of the hallway. The boys stopped their laughing, and they all spun around to see me. For a second, their eyes were filled with terror, but then they saw that it was only me, and their faces transformed into wide smiles. There were no angels or demons in their group, but I did see a vampire, drow, dwarf, goblin, 2 cat creatures, a devil that looked like a lizard mixed with a 2-legged horse, humanoid bee creature, An elf with pale skin, a satyr, a terrifying boy with mouths where his eyes should have been, and a boy that looked like a harpy. Well, well, well. If it isn't the new challenger, Albert said with an evil laugh. He stepped down from the spray of the showers and handed his sledgehammer to one of the cat boys as he walked through the group of his friends. Why are you messing up our school? It wasn't the stupidest question I've ever asked, but it was probably a close second or third. 'Cause it is fun. The boy with mouths where his eyes should have been screeched. All three of the mouths opened when he spoke, and the sight was like something out of a nightmare. Well, stop it, I ordered, and I was a bit surprised that my voice didn't come out in a squeak. The boy that looked like a devil had a big backpack on, and the tip of the silver trophy poked out of the top. And give us back our trophies. I raised my arm to point at the backpack. The boys all looked at each other, and then Albert snickered. Nah, we are taking the trophies. We should have won them in the first place. We are the better wrestling team. The rest of the boys nodded with the handsome kids' words. If you were the better team, you would have won them fair and square. Give them back, or I'm gonna call the cops. The arm I had pointed with was starting to tremble a bit, and I lowered it before they could notice. Nah, you aren't going to call the cops, Albert shrugged and then stepped closer to me. Oh, I will. I stepped back a bit, and felt the back of my legs touch the bench between the lockers. Nah, here is what is going to happen. We are going to go over to the girls' locker room and have some fun over there. You are going to come with us. Once we are done, we'll leave. You aren't going to tell the cops shit, or we'll find out where you live and pay you a visit one night. I'm not afraid of you, I said, but my voice did quiver a bit. I'd forgotten about Charlotte for a few moments. Where was the succubus girl? I imagined she could deal with all of these boys in a few moments. She'd probably kill them. And I didn't want anyone to die, but I also didn't like the idea of them beating me up. We can just fuck you up now. Maybe we can do it so that you won't be talking about anything for a few months. Then when you finally do say something, the group of us will just be each other's alibi. It doesn't have to get violent. Just give me the trophies and get out of here. I forced my mouth to say. I'd been scared before, but my legs were shaking against the bench now, and my vision was starting to swim. I'd only had a few hours of practice with Dr. King, and I replayed all the various takedown moves in my head. Nah, Albert said as he stepped again toward me. Our chests were only a foot away from each other. Well, my eyes were level with his chest where his heart was, and I had to tilt my head back to see him. His left hand reached out to grab the front of my shirt, and the entire world started to slow down and crawl along at a snail's pace. Let him go, I heard Charlotte say from behind me, and Albert's gang of boys jumped a bit. Well, look at here. We've got a girl in the boys' locker room. Is this your bodyguard, fag? Albert growled to me, and I felt his fist tighten around the fabric at the front of my shirt. No, I'm his sister, the succubus said with a shrug. I guess that she hadn't dropped her disguise because none of them mentioned that she was a succubus. She was also still wearing her glasses that looked like mine. You are kind of hot. I like the glasses. Albert glanced between the two of us and I felt his grip relax. Twins. Yep. We haven't called the police yet, but we can do even worse. Just drop the trophies and leave. Charlotte crossed her arms and I wondered how she could look so nonchalant when facing 13 boys. Do even worse? I don't think you understand what we are going to do to you once we have finished kicking the shit out of your brother, Albert said. His words made my imagination slide to a horrible place and I felt my fear turn into rage. These guys didn't know that Charlotte was a trained succubus assassin. They just thought she was a normal girl, and Albert planned on doing horrible things to her after he beat me up. The edges of my vision started to darken, and I observed my left fist fly out and slam into Albert's handsome face. I hadn't even thought about doing it. The limb just seemed to move on its own as if I was watching someone else play a video game. No, I shouted, half because I was mad at this asshole for thinking he was going to hurt an innocent girl, and half because I almost didn't want to punch him. Albert's head snapped back, and I felt his nose crumple under my knuckles. The sensation was oddly satisfying, and my right hand came out to punch him in the throat area. He fell away from me after both strikes, but his bully friends caught him before he could fall. The group looked at me in stunned silence for a few moments, and Albert made a Few hacking sounds while he touched his nose. His face didn't look very handsome now, and his eyes were wide with fury. You punched me. My nose is broken. We just called Dr. King. Kristen shouted behind me, and I turned slightly to see the group of angel girls standing in the back corner of the locker room. They had only stepped half a foot out of the hallway, and the trio looked terrified. Fuck you! Albert screamed as he shot toward me. Then the entire locker room erupted into chaos. Chapter 12. I tripped over the bench when Albert shot toward me. A cry of panic escaped my mouth as I fell, but the folly ended up saving me a bit. The accident helped me avoid colliding with his chest, and the large boy slammed face first into the lockers above me. I tried to get my feet flat on the ground so that I could stand, but my legs accidentally tangled with his, and he gave out a startled cry when he fell over sideways. The world was kind of in slow motion again, and I saw Albert's handsome face collide with 4 different opened locker doors when he tumbled down to my side. I reached for the bench and managed to pull myself up to my feet in time to see one of the cat boys try to punch Charlotte. The girl still hadn't taken off her glasses, and her hands had not transformed into her usual bird-looking claws, so I guessed that she hadn't dropped her disguise. She danced back a few steps, and the cat boy's fist missed her stomach. It was kind of a hooking punch, and he hadn't expected her to dodge it. He was thrown a bit off balance, and the brown-haired girl's foot tripped him so that he fell against the lockers. The other cat boy jumped toward me with a growl. I remembered one of the moves Dr. King had taught me, and I shot to the ground like a falling brick. The boy's chest passed over me. I looked down a bit to protect my glasses, and then I stood up while I lifted my arms against his legs. The cat boy had a bunch of momentum from his jump, and he tumbled over me with a surprised yelp. I twisted around to see him on top of Albert, and it seemed as if they were both stunned. The boy with the mouths for eyes had tried to tackle Charlotte, but I watched the girl fling open one of the broken lockers. The metal face of the door slammed into the boy's lower mouth, and a spray of teeth fell out of his head like a rain of hail. He fell back with a screech of agony, and then he got tangled up with the bee-boy. The harpy boy aimed a kick at my stomach that I was too slow to dodge. Remembered how Dr. King had taught me to tense my stomach, but the kick still hurt, and it knocked what felt like all the air out of my lungs. I tried to ignore the pain, and I wrapped my left arm around his bird leg. Dr. King had taught me this takedown, and I stepped into the boy as I tried to hook his back foot. I'd done this a few times against Dr. King, and while the giant werewolf had fallen down to the mat when I executed the move, part of me had thought he was just trying to make me feel better. The technique did work, and I was a bit surprised when I landed on top of the feathery attacker. My elbow slammed into his stomach at the same time as the back of his head bounced off the hard concrete of the locker room floor, and it was immediately apparent to me that he'd been knocked out. The locker aisle that Charlotte and I fought in was getting stacked with bodies, and I tried to disengage with the harpy boy as the goblin kicked me. He was short but almost as wide as the dwarf, and his first kick hit me on the top of my left shoulder. I hissed when the electric shock of pain went through my body, and then pushed off the ground with my legs so that I would shoot toward him. The goblin probably outweighed me by only 10 pounds, so my tackle was effective at knocking him down. He tumbled onto the locker room floor while I held his legs, but now I was out of the aisle and the other boys could come at me from all sides. I got a punch in on the goblin's face, but then someone kicked me in the ribs on my left, and someone kicked me in the back. I couldn't remember the last time that I'd breathed, and my vision was starting to turn a strange sepia color. Something hit me in the chest, and I felt a sickening crack reverberate through my entire body. Then I was looking at the ceiling, and it spun like a kaleidoscope of only yellow and cream colors. Sherman! 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 I heard a voice calling my name, and I recognized Charlotte by the 5th time she said it. Huh! I gasped, and the succubus helped me sit up. Are you okay? She whispered, and I could hear the boys shouting. Yeah, I think I lied. Every bone in my body felt broken, and I didn't understand how I could even sit right now. The room was tilting, and I suddenly felt as if I had to puke. They are running away. I'm going to follow them and see if I can take the trophy. I'll text you after you lose the angel girls and the werewolf. Her voice was a dark whisper in my ear, and I saw that she still had her thick rimmed glasses on. Werewolf. I tried to ask, but then I had to cough and I saw the succubus sprint past the showers and through an open door. I put my hand on the concrete of the locker room floor and tried to get up, but it felt as if my arm was trying to bench press the earth and my shoulders just screamed at refusal. Sherman. Wow. I couldn't tell which angel girl was speaking, but the three beautiful girls were kneeling next to me. I felt their hands on my arms and shoulders, and the sensation was pleasant. You fought all of them, Rose said, and her eyes were opened wide with surprise. I got beat up. I tried to laugh, but then something near what I thought was my left kidney cramped and I gasped. You are so brave, Lily said. Oh no, don't stand. You are hurt. I have to go help Charlotte. She went after them. I tried to push off the ground again, but my arm wasn't having any of it. Just wait here. Dr. King is on his way, Kristen said. No, I need to help her, I said, but then I was looking up at the ceiling, and I heard Dr. King's voice. I'm thinking that these boys are drawing a lithiene in the sand. Yeah, the werewolf said. I blinked a few times and realized that my head was resting on something smooth and soft. It was Rose's bare legs, and I felt the angel girl's hands push me back down into her lap when I tried to sit up. Fingers held both my left and right hands, and I turned to see Lily and Kristen sitting on each side of me. He's awake, Lily said. Hey Sherman, Dr. King said as he leaned his wolf face over me. The lovely ladies here told me about your epic struggle against those vandals. Oh yeah, you've made me proud by standing up for the school. I called out Giant Gene, and he said he had nothing to do with this, but he's a liar and I'm about ready to head over to his house and talk to him. Man. Yeah, he's been standing behind his boys too much and then grandstanding from that safety. Well, that's not gonna work anymore. I'm gonna go tell him he's crossed the line and he needs to leave my boys alone. Oh yeah, I need to come with you, I said. I tried to set up, but it felt like Rose was as strong as Charlotte, and her fingers kept me pressed against her lap as if I was a baby. Nah, Sherman, you've done good. Oh yeah, the girls here said that you stepped into the squared circle with Albert and came out on top. Oh yeah, then you protected them and your sister from those other boys. You're a real champion. Yeah, not just in the ring but in life. Men are supposed to protect their women and you did a fine job of that. Yeah, now let me tap in here for a few minutes. Giant Gene is out of your weight class and he might just squash you like a bug. I was a bit angry with him when we spoke on the telephone, and I'm thinking that Morgan is over there as well. I'm bringing Coach Helsig and we might have to rumble. Oh yeah, I need to go. I don't know where my sister is. She said she would follow the boys. I'm worried about her. I gently pushed Rose's hands away from my shoulders and managed to sit up. I didn't hear the spray of water anymore, and I wondered how long I had been unconscious. I'll make sure that she is safe. Can't have any girls getting hurt. The werewolf stood. I need to go. I tried to think of what I could say that would appeal to the wrestler's code, and then I came up with what I thought was the perfect addition. It is for my honor. I can't let these guys get away with stealing the trophies and threatening my sister. They have to pay the price for disrespecting the code of the squared circle. I need to see it through. Oh, yeah. The giant werewolf looked at me. It was hard to see his eyes through his wide sunglasses, but the wolf did make a short nod. I can't argue with that. Yeah, let's get going. Dr. King reached out a giant arm and yanked me to my feet. The three angel girls let out a surprised gasp when the werewolf pulled me from their grasp, and I saw Kristen open her mouth to say something. You three go home. Yeah, the championship cage battle is about to begin, and you all need to be safe in your homes, the werewolf said. But we are the school's media team. We need to. Rose began to argue, but the alpha wolf silenced her with a gesture of his fingers. Oh yeah, there is a time and a place for that stuff, but this is a private battle that has finally reached a boiling point. Now the lava is going to overflow and damage might be done to all in the vicinity. No, you three go on home, and you can witness the aftermath of our struggle when the dawn light rises to bathe the world in a celestial glow. That's the way it shall be. Tonight. Oh yeah, now get going. He slammed his hands together with the sound of a thunderclap. The three angel girls jumped to their feet and they gave me a last look before they turned to walk out of the locker room. Then Dr. King and I were running out the door. We didn't have to run far. The werewolf had driven his jeep through the service road and parked it on the basketball courts right in front of the gym. My body was screaming with every step, but I managed to climb up the side of the vehicle and get my seatbelt on without fainting again. Dr. King fired up. The engine held up to the moon and then flipped the jeep around with a screech of tires and engine. We popped up a curb, down a wide set of stairs, and then we fishtailed a bit when we hit the service road leading out of the school. On our way out of the parking lot, we almost ran into a raised pickup truck, and I saw Mr. Helsig wave to us from inside the cab. The orc spun his truck around and he followed us out of the parking lot. I reached into my pocket to check my phone. There was a missed call from Charlotte that came in 10 minutes ago, and a text shortly after. They went to Giant Jean's house. It looks like Morgan is there too. They are getting ready for battle or a party. Hard to tell with all these folding chairs. I don't know if I can get the trophy without being seen, let alone kill the werewolf. There are too many of them. We'll need another plan. My thumbs raced across the screen of the phone, and I typed back a reply to her. I'm in the car with Dr. King. We are coming over to Jean's place right now. They are going to fight. Get away so Dr. King doesn't smell you. Almost as soon as I had finished texting the succubus, she replied back. This is perfect. I'm going to try to do it while they are occupied. Don't get hurt. Up. I should have expected that reply from Charlotte. She didn't seem to fear for her own life. I knew that she had said she wanted me to stay safe, but someone also needed to look out for her. Dr. King would probably be able to smell her around the house, and I just hoped that he would be more interested in fighting Giant Jean than tracking down the succubus that he thought had tried to kill me. The jeep skidded to a stop, and the phone almost slipped from my sweaty hands. We were in front of Giant Jean's mansion, and I saw the front door of the large home swing open. The big blonde werewolf stepped onto the paved walkway, and the vampire followed right behind him. Then the crowd of boys leaked out of the door and they all began to walk across the grass of the front yard. Noticed that there was a stack of folding chairs on the lawn, and it kind of did look like they were getting ready for a party. Mr. Helsig was already out of his truck, and I saw that the orc was shirtless, had fluorescent war paint on his face, and cloth tassels tied around his massive biceps. He stepped out onto the lawn before I could exit the jeep, and his voice rang out with low, guttural words. You send your minions to do your dirty work. You have angered the gods, Giant Jean. They have asked us to grant you endings fitting of the cowards that you are. Woo. Looks like we've gone and angered the natives. Listen up, Helsig, our boys didn't do anything. Why would they even want to? We've got the nicest equipment in the state. Look at the shoes that our boys are wearing. Those are $200 shoes. Woo. We can outfit all of our team with this stuff. Because we are the best. We are the winners, and everyone loves winners. My robe is worth more than your car. Woo. Comes from Japan, and it is the finest piece of silk you can ever imagine. Comes from spiders, not just silkworms. I work. All your grandstanding and your showboating is gonna come to an end tonight. Yeah, Dr. King said as he stood next to the orc. You've got no shame getting your kids involved in our feud. I can forgive a lot of what you've done, but I can't forgive you pitting our boys against each other. As crossing the line. Oh yeah. You crossed the line all those years ago, brother. I told you how I felt about Lady Bella, and you went after her anyways. You never cared about my feelings then, and you called me brother. Now I heard your pup was hurting mine. It's one thing to keep the violence between us, but he started this, brother, and tonight it's gonna end. Giant Jean pointed a clawed werewolf finger at me, and I felt my aching body shiver with dread. You're just making up excuses now. Dr. King reached up to his sunglasses, grabbed them by the rim, and flipped them off of his face. Nobody moved for the second it took for them to tumble through the air, but then they hit the sidewalk and the four muscular men erupted into a melee. Giant Jean rushed forward, and Dr. King brought up his elbow. The point struck the larger werewolf in the face, and Jean's legs were knocked out from underneath him. He fell onto the grass, and Dr. King jumped high into the air, with his knees pointed over the larger wolf's stomach. He fell like a missile. But Giant Jean rolled out of the way at the last second. Morgan made a short dash toward Mr. Helsig, and the shorter muscular orc stepped to the side to clothesline the vampire. Morgan seemed to have expected the move though, and he ducked under the green arm. He stood up from behind, with a rising front kick that caught the muscular orc square in the back. Mr. Helsig staggered forward from the blow, but he managed to avoid running into the circle of Lincoln High boys that were standing on the far side of the grassy lawn. Jean was up now, and he was trading face punches with Dr. King. Each of them must have had the power to smash through a brick wall, and they were pounding on each other's wolf faces like they were beating drums. The other boys were cheering the match on, but each of the werewolves was dripping blood from their snouts, and it was obvious that the two supernatural creatures were intent on killing each other. Mr. Helsig had grabbed onto Morgan, and he lifted the vampire over his head, as if the fancy man weighed nothing. Then he dropped him easily and Morgan crashed to the grass with a grunt. The vampire's sparkly robe wasn't off, but the orc didn't seem to care, and he leapt into the air with a frantic war cry. Morgan didn't roll out of the way, and my teacher belly flopped on top of him. Dr. King looked to be taking the worst end of the beating, but he interrupted Jean's next series of punches with an elbow to the face. Jean's nose looked to break in half and he fell onto the grass. My teacher wasted no time with his next move, and his elbow drop connected with the larger werewolf's chest. Almost sounded like a shotgun blast had gone off, and I winced along with the boys on the other side of the grass lawn. "Arg!" Mr. Helsig cried out, and my eyes moved over to my teacher. He was tangled up with Morgan, and the vampire had him in a strange leg lock. Dr. King jumped to help his friend, and the werewolf kicked the vampire in the face. Morgan flew away from the orc, and he skidded across the grass of the lawn like a skipped frisbee. "Look out!" cried out. Dr. King was helping Mr. Helsig to his feet, and Giant Jean had snuck up behind him. The larger werewolf seemed to have healed from most of his facial injuries, and he smashed his bowling ball-sized fist into my teacher's back. Dr. King collapsed with the sound of breaking bones, and Mr. Helsig tackled the blonde werewolf. Morgan had gotten to his feet, and he moved to grapple with Dr. King. The brown-furred werewolf was starting to stand, but it was obvious that he was a bit drowsy from the mighty blow that had been dealt to his spine, and he couldn't fend off the vampire's hands. Morgan threaded his arms through Dr. King so that the werewolf was kind of prone, and then the vampire did a suplex move to drive Dr. King's head into the grass. The other crowd of boys cheered, and I looked their direction. Charlotte was standing behind them in the doorway, and she waved the trophy at me. I didn't know what she intended to do next, since she couldn't just jump in with a for men and kill Jean without anyone else seeing her. Then the girl did the unexpected, and tossed the silver trophy into the grass ring. "Right on," one of the boys said as soon as he saw the trophy bounce on the grass. He reached over to the neat stack of chairs that the group stood next to and threw one into the ring. Mr. Helsig was straddling Giant Jean, and the orc repeatedly slammed his ham fists down onto the face of the werewolf. It looked like Jean was about to fall unconscious, but then the werewolf brought up his furry hands to catch the orcs, and the two of them rolled onto the grass to the other side of the ring. They separated after a few seconds, and each stood to face each other again. Both men looked tired, injured, and their punches moved out like they were trying to lazily bat away flies. I turned to Dr. King and saw that he was trying to escape from one of Morgan's leg locks. "The trophy!" I shouted out to my teacher. He heard me over the roar of the cheering crowd, and he looked at the ring to see the large hunk of silver. The werewolf grabbed it, and then swung the makeshift weapon at the handsome vampire. The strike connected with Morgan's face, and the man spun away. "Yo up!" Dr. King shouted as he tossed the trophy away. It was hard to see exact details because we only had the light of the full moon, but it looked as if my teacher's hand was smoking. "Brother, you are about to be in for a lot of hurt. Time to giant up." The blonde werewolf started to pump his arms frantically, and the boys from Lincoln High cheered. Jean was kind of shaking but also doing frantic bicep curls. Mr. Helsig stepped up to him and swung out with a massive haymaker. Probably would have punched a hole through the door of the orc's own truck, but the blonde-furred werewolf didn't even seem to feel the hit. The green-skinned man punched again and again, but each one only seemed to make Jean pump his fists faster. It almost looked as if the werewolf was getting larger, but that was impossible. "Brother, you are gonna pay," Jean shouted as he wagged his finger at Mr. Helsig. The two men collided with the sound of a thunderclap, and it really did look like Jean was twice the size of the incredibly muscular orc. Jean wrapped his arm around my teacher, spun him upside down, and then pile drove him into the grass. The crowd of boys let out a cheer, and I felt my heart sink. "You'll stay down if you know what is good for you, brother," Jean shouted as he stood. Mr. Helsig was trying to roll on the ground, but he looked really hurt, and I could tell that the man was having problems seeing anything. Dr. King flew at Jean, and the smaller werewolf held a chair in his hand. The steel smashed into the blonde werewolf, but it bent around his muscular form, as if it was made out of a wire pipe cleaner. Jean just laughed and then backhanded Dr. King. The attack caught my teacher off guard and he spun through the air like a top. "No!" I shouted as I stepped forward. I didn't know how I could help my teachers, but it was apparent that the tide of battle had turned in Lincoln High's favor. The toe of my shoe touched something solid when I stepped, and I saw that the silver trophy had rolled to my feet. I bent down, picked up the hunk of silver, and felt a strange power flow through the thing. I suddenly knew that this wasn't just a hunk of silver shaped into a trophy. This was something else entirely, and it might have been the reason that everyone at school could remember my name. There was a flash of memory in my mind, like a lake or a river and a flock of sheep. Lessos. It was a woman's voice that echoed in my mind. Her tone sounded a bit like Charlotte's, but less sensual. Was that the name of this magical artifact? Didn't know, but I did know that I had to save my teacher, and I stepped into the ring with the hunk of metal over my head like I would have held a thick wooden stake. Giant Jean jumped into the air and slammed the rear side of his thigh down on Dr. King's face. Then he stood with a triumphant shout as he raised both of his giant arms into the air. The blonde werewolf gestured to his boys to cheer louder, and he cupped his hand to his ear as if he couldn't hear them. Dr. King was trying to get to his feet, as was Mr. Helsig, but it looked as if both men needed a few minutes to recover. Then I saw Morgan step up to the orc, grab his hair, and lift him into a suplex position. I drove the tip of the trophy into the vampire's back where I thought his heart was. The metal slid in easier than I expected. It was almost like the thing was a hot knife, and fabulous Morgan's body was made out of water. The vampire didn't even scream, he just kind of evaporated into steam, which then turned into ash a half a second later. "What did you do?" Giant Jean had moved to grab Dr. King, and both of the werewolves were staring at me with opened eyes. I didn't answer. Instead, I forced my aching body to dash toward the big blonde werewolf. Jean let go of Dr. King's shoulders, and he tried to sweat me away, but he was moving as if he's swimming through molasses, and I punched the tip of the silver metal into his chest before he could hit me. The werewolf screamed. The boys screamed. Dr. King screamed. Mr. Helsig screamed. I screamed. Then I felt the world tip on end, as if it was falling into a feverish